Amber Hinds, welcome to Breakdown.
I'm excited to be here, Matt.
Guess what? You're the guinea pig for the first time Gravity Forms is using StreamYard. Not using StreamYard. We're using Riverside, getting rid of StreamYard. So you're part of the whole new, we're going to produce video for the podcast moving forward.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Surprise.
That means I get to share my screen.
Yes, you can share your screen. That's why I sent you, you got about 8 messages from me earlier today as I rerouted our link. But excited to have you here. You've been on the podcast before. You've been on webinars before. You've been in our Learn site before. I, too, have been on Equalize Digital webinars as well. But for folks who don't know who you are in the audience, who are you and what do you do?
I am the CEO of Equalize Digital. We are a company that focuses on web accessibility. We do a lot in WordPress, but also a little bit out of WordPress. We have a plugin called Accessibility Checker that automates testing and fixing accessibility problems in WordPress. And we do a lot of accessibility auditing for different software products, including Gravity Forms, who cares about accessibility, which we love.
Fantastic. Didn't get to see you at Pressnomics this year. I looked up at the mountain that we climbed. Did we climb that mountain? We trotted up that mountain last year.
I was a little slower than you, maybe, on reaching the top.
Don't worry. I looked at it this year.
In our defense, we did that after running a 5K.
This is true. I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
I made you run a 5K.
Yeah,
in Phoenix.
Ran the 5K.
It was very hot.
Yes, it was extremely hot, and then we climbed what I consider a mountain because it was pretty high. But it was a good time.
They don't have hills like that in New Jersey.
No hills like that around here. But it was great to sort of be there and listening to all the folks that are using WordPress and interested about the WordPress economy, running their own WordPress businesses. Before we dive into the stuff that you have prepared today, the big topic at PressConf, I said Pressnomics, PressConf, was, of course, AI. But a year after the PressConf that you and I were at, it seems like people have a wrangle on like the impact of AI, and now they're just trying to figure out which lane am I picking here in the WordPress world for AI? Is it for development, design, copywriting, agents and doing all this other stuff? How has AI impacted you and perhaps some of the stuff that you'll show us today?
So we are, like everybody, using a lot of AI at Equalize Digital. We have a ton of AI linting and code review set up on all of our repos on GitHub and also in our IDEs. And our content specialist, I think, uses some AI to help with writing content, but we are very anti just publishing AI written content because I think quality is going to win over weird generic stuff. And especially on accessibility, a lot of the AI generated content is not super great. But I will say my background is that I was developer light before I brought in my partner, Steve, who's our CTO, who is actually a real developer, and our dev team. And I used to do a lot of building of WordPress websites. And so I'm pretty familiar with PHP, but not so much with JavaScript. And I definitely have benefited more from AI code assistance. I think I'm doing more code writing and or guiding AI, right? That in the past 18 months than I did for a while. I had kind of stepped out of code and AI has helped me get a little bit back into it, including what you're going to see today is something I totally wrote without our dev team because sometimes you're running fast and I didn't want to have to wait and get in line. And I was like, no, we need this. And I'm going to get AI to help me do it. I did get it. I did see Steve submitted a PR code review of my my code when he found out I'm coming on this podcast to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, so we won't say it's all 100% perfect, but
yeah, it's sort of like the student in like in high school now who's like, hey, write a paper about the book that you read, and they don't read or write anything. They just throw it through ChatGPT. And then then the teacher says, okay, now stand up in front of class and tell us what you've learned. And you're like, oh, well, I don't know if I did any of this stuff. No,
I'm a little better than that.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Global Accessibility Awareness Day 2026. You messaged me. You said, hey, I'd love to talk about this, not only because it's a great effort and a great cause that you're always working hard on, you and the team, but you're using Gravity Forms at the center of it. Before you show us what you're doing with Gravity Forms at the center of it, tell us about Global Accessibility Awareness Day.
So Global Accessibility Awareness Day is an event that was created 15 years ago. This will be the 15th annual one. And the idea behind it with the founders was that they wanted to create a single day where a lot of people and organizations are all talking about accessibility, with the idea that that will spread awareness on social media because it'll be a common thread. People will be using, you know, a specific hashtag on one day. Traditionally, a lot of Global Accessibility Awareness Day events are come to a webinar. And we've been participating in Global Accessibility Awareness Day probably for maybe like 5 years or so since we've been running our meetup. And we were doing webinars. And last year I said, you know, there are so many webinars happening this day that it's kind of hard, because it's great that there's so many, but also there are so many people have to choose from. And then you get like webinar fatigue and you're like, do I actually want to go to 6 webinars, right? And the other thing about webinars is they can be great for learning, but they don't necessarily actively change anything. And my thought was, okay, is there a way we can increase awareness, but also make a difference? And so last year, we came up with the idea that we were going to host our own virtual contributor day for WordPress on Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Instead of running a webinar, we asked everybody who normally works on WordPress plugins or WordPress themes or contributes to WordPress core to say, okay, on this day, it's always the third Thursday of the month. So the third Thursday of May 2025, now 2026, we are going to work on accessibility. So that could mean you go, if you're a core contributor, instead of working on whatever you normally would, you go look at what accessibility tickets are open for WordPress core, and you work on those. If you are a plugin developer or a theme developer or somebody who just has a website, you're going to say, what accessibility things can I fix in my plugin, my theme, or on my website? These things that maybe sometimes sit in our backlog because we don't prioritize them, and just say, what can I do for accessibility on this day, with the idea that it will actually create some meaningful change and impact. Last year, we had 86 people pledge 382 hours towards working on WordPress, and some very significant changes. There were multiple PRs that were submitted and merged into WordPress core on that day. A lot of people who said that they worked on individual plugins that they had to make them more accessible. And people who just said, I spent a couple of hours writing alt text on images on my website, which is also helpful. You know, a lot of different ways to contribute.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is how can, like, if somebody's not a core contributor, maybe they don't own a plugin or anything like that, and maybe they're also non-technical, like what can they do to contribute? Like you said here, doing like alt text on images. How can non-technical or people who just don't have ownership of a plugin or core, how can they contribute?
So there are a couple of ways. One thing I would say, if you are interested in the theme side of things, I actually decided this year, even though last year I was like, we're not doing a webinar. This year we are doing a webinar with it, but it's going to be more of a workshop. It's not a sit and watch webinar. It's a show up. I'm going to walk you through accessibility testing a theme on WordPress.org. There are 108 of these that have the accessibility ready tag, which have not been tested, some of them for many years. And so my goal with this is to walk people through, even if you're not an expert, you can learn how to test by testing, and then give some feedback to those theme developers, and we can make sure that everything that has that tag still needs it. So that's one way. Another thing you can do if you're not technical that would be a really great contribution is on WordPress.tv. You can volunteer to submit captions for videos. And I have a link for this on our landing page. I would say start with the accessibility videos so that more people can access the accessibility videos, but you could add captions to any video. And there are automated tools that allow you to do this, and then you correct them and you can upload the file to WordPress.tv. On your own website, you could use our free Equalize Digital Accessibility Checker plugin, and it would scan, like, let's just say you said, I'm just going to work on my homepage, which would include your header and footer and some global areas. And you could open that up on your homepage of your website, and you could say, okay, maybe I need to add some alt text. Maybe I could make my link text more meaningful. So instead of saying click here or learn more, I'm going to make it say something like learn more about us, right? Things like that. Fixing your headings. So there's a lot of content related things. And even if you're only doing that on your own website, that would make a difference for however many users you have that visit your website, maybe thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people a year.
Yes, I was going to say, let's package up a nice little toolkit, and you have the plugin, and we'll make sure that we have it in the show notes. That's one great way that people could apply this. I'm just trying to think of think on the fly, which is very dangerous for me. But can folks do something like spin up playground.wordpress.net, which will run WordPress in your browser, and you have network control. You can install themes that Amber's talking about and Amber's plugin. Is that a good way for, from one technical perspective, okay, I'm going to contribute an hour that day, and that hour is I'm going to test one of these themes, I'm going to install it on WordPress, I'm going to run Amber's plugin, and then what? What does that person then do after? Or is that really technical? Is then they have to go commit that to, or at least open up an issue on GitHub for that particular theme or plugin? Would that be the next steps? Or is there something like somebody could workshop that day and just sit down and go, this is what I'm going to do for this next hour, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so that's, if you want to contribute to themes, that is what the workshop that I'm running, which is going to be at 10 a.m. U.S. Central Time, 3 UTC. And you could do it in Playground. There are some accessibility testing tools, browser extensions that don't work well with Playground, unfortunately, because Playground, for folks who don't know, is an iframe. And so some browser extensions they just test the container. They don't actually test what's inside the iframe. So we actually have, InstaWP has donated sites to the WordPress accessibility team. And so at my workshop, I'm actually going to walk you through this process of, we have a whole thing set up with demo content already, so you don't have to waste time creating that. You can just spin up one of these sites with InstaWP. It will have all of the content that we expect you to be able to test. All you have to do is install the specific theme that you're going to test. And then I'll walk you through okay, here's what you would look like. It needs to have a skip link. What is a skip link? How do you test if it has a skip link? How do you test if the skip link works, right? And so I'll walk people through all of that process. And then you would need to, we have a process for creating a spreadsheet and documenting it. And this is a big thing that I worked on with Joe Dolson over the past year, was totally rewriting the accessibility ready testing process to make it easier for someone who's not an expert to do and to document consistently. So we have a whole process that you go through. And then if you want to provide feedback, you would actually post a comment on the track ticket in WordPress themes track. So you would need to have a WordPress.org account in order to provide feedback. But even if you just did the testing, if you didn't have that account, someone else could probably post that feedback for you on the track ticket.
All right, here's another crazy harebrained idea. Maybe not. Maybe you already have thought about this. How can people bring their own tokens to the party? So how can people leverage their own, AI costs money, right? It's one of the things we're all learning quite quickly. If somebody has a Claude Code account or a Codex account and there's stuff to be done, that stuff adds up. Could people come and help with their own tokens, their own AI chatbot to help solve some of the accessibility issues they find in a plugin?
I mean, if a lot of WordPress a lot of WordPress themes and plugins have like GitHub repos, and they might have an accessibility issue tag. So if you were to go look at issues, like let's say WooCommerce has a public GitHub repo, you could go find issues that are tagged as accessibility and then probably
put your agent to work.
Right? Like create a fork, create a branch, and get your AI agent to work. I think you would need to check it before you submit that PR back to WooCommerce.
This is
but
dangerous
I do
territory.
think there might be a way to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know
just
specifically for testing if there's a great way to automate that workflow. But if somebody wants to show up at that workshop that I'm running and be like, here's how this process that you have that's super manual can be automated, I would love to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all, this is just sort of tongue in cheek, but I know that with Claude Code specifically, there's all these headlines now of hitting its limits faster. And 4.7, if you're a Claude Code user, 4.7 is allegedly using more tokens faster than 4.6. So people hitting these limits. So, I think the cost of AI is going to go up for like the really good, fast stuff. And now we might need to see like volunteers coming with their $100 a month accounts, to help the cause,
like,
right? To
I'll
use a little bit of
donate
their
my
tokens.
tokens.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting world we live in. All right, Amber, I'll let you go ahead and share the screen. What you'll show us is maybe how Gravity Forms sits at the center of the site and how you deploy that.
Yeah, so this is our landing page for Global Accessibility Awareness Day 2026. It's pretty much the same as the one I did last year because it worked so well. And one of the things that we wanted to do was give people the ability to make a pledge. So you can see right now it says join 26 people pledging 98.5 hours to improve accessibility in WordPress. And there's a make a pledge, and it jumps you down to a Gravity form where people say how many hours are they pledging. They can only enter 1 to 24 because, we're not expecting that you have one of those reverse time spinners from Harry Potter. You have a max, right? And then they can say what they're working on. They put in their information. Name and email are required. They can register for our Zoom workshop. And I actually have this set up with Zapier where if they select this option, it automatically just sends them to Zoom. I don't have to do any work, which is super handy. Job title, company name, their website, and then an image. And they can either use their Gravatar, or they could, if they wanted to upload an image, let's say they don't have Gravatar, they can upload an image and set what their alternative text for the image should be. And then they, of course, consent, because what it does is it outputs everybody who is pledging and what they said they were going to work on. And the historical way that we would have built a page like this is they'd submit the Gravity form, and then there'd be a custom post type that's like people or something. And then it would put them in as pending posts. And then once I reviewed them and published them, they would become live, and this would be like a post grid or post feed. But I kind of realized last year when I was setting this up that it's a little silly to save these people to the database in a custom post type when all of the data actually exists in the form entries and is in the database in the form entries already. And so what I did, let me click edit on this page, is I actually created some shortcodes, both to create this people grid and also to output these numbers, because every time somebody pledges, I don't want to have to come back and do them, be like, okay, now I manually have to add this. So if you look at this page in the block editor, if it will decide to load itself up here, I should have had this page open already. Sorry.
That's an underrated, opportunity for a lot of people. Is a lot of folks go right to the custom post type and custom fields for like storing this data. I think it's kind of like our muscle memory for being in WordPress for so long, and it's like sort of how we were all trained with WordPress and like treating it like a content management system. But obviously leveraging entries, it's already right there in the database, right? It's just calling that stuff right from there.
Yeah, and if you think about like performance is mattering more and more, why would I duplicate data from one table to another in my database when it already exists? And actually, one of the things I love about Gravity Forms is it makes it so easy to do this. So I basically have 3 shortcodes that I created, and we can look at the code for this in just a second. But the GAD pledge people count, and it has a gravity form underscore ID equals, and it's pulling from 73. So there's one attribute. So that just basically says, what gravity form should I look at? And then I've got my hour total shortcode. And then down here below where my people are, I just have a short code I called my pledge participant grid. And basically the way this works, because I did realize I don't want the minute somebody submits the form, I don't want them to be public, because what happens if somebody, uploads a naughty image or writes something not very kind in their message of what they're going to work on. So I set up this with a hidden field. Actually, wait, let me go to that form. So I have this status field that is administrative only. So it doesn't load on the front end at all, but the default is pending approval. And then there's an approved and a not approved. And every entry that comes in, you can see I have a few here that actually need approval. And I actually submitted one that I could just show you right there. Basically the way I get them to show up on the front end is I do some, I review them, and you can, if you just have Gravity Forms, you can click edit on any of these. And this one is Sally Spammer, who's totally fake. So obviously I'm going to say not approved. And what's helpful about that is I could filter my Gravity Forms entries to only show me, okay, which ones still need approval. So if I just said status is pending approval and I search, because once you start to get a lot of them, right? Now I only have to look at 6 of them. So she's gone. I also see it's not just spammers. Like this person, I guess, submitted the form twice within a few minutes. So obviously I'd only want to approve one. I don't want her to show up twice. So that's why it's helpful to have that not approved, approved thing. And then for folks who have submitted it, what I'm doing here is I'm just checking to make sure that whatever they wrote looks good. And then this one I've clicked before, so don't worry, we're not playing Russian roulette with images. I'll check their image, right? If they have uploaded one. I suppose there's a slight roll of the dice because I don't check someone's Gravatar image. All the ones that don't have an image is they chose Gravatar. But I also, if you have admin columns, this is kind of this cool handy thing. The admin columns plugin works really well with the Gravity Forms plugin. So I don't necessarily have to go in and click edit with Gravity Forms like that. I could also just write in line, be like, okay, now Jen is approved. And she had 3 hours that she said. So if we went back and looked at this page, now that I've approved her, we should see this jump up. There are 27 people. Now we're at 101 hours. And if we go down here, then we should find Jen right there in our grid of people. So it's this super handy, easy way to do it. I don't know if your listeners would care about code, but I'm happy to show you what those shortcodes look like.
Yeah, folks would probably like to see that. Fun fact, this is not WordPress related, but it would be something that I'm just trying to think again on the fly. Dave from Gravity Wiz, they have a free version of their ChatGPT add-on for Gravity Forms, and then they have their premium one, which is under Connections, or their connector suite, whatever they call it. And I do successfully use, this is a long aside, but OpenAI has a low-cost content moderation model that you can call. And you can use ChatGPT 4o Mini, which is really good at image context and looking at the image and just saying,
it could be doing this for me.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other thing I might have been able to solve for, I thought about this later, but seeing this person who submitted it twice, there is a setting on, where's my form entry, which probably I could just turn on right now that I really like on email. There, I'm pretty sure is something that says, no, Maybe not. I'm making it up. I could have sworn there's like a default gravity form setting where I can say like
It's under form
only
settings.
allow an email address to be used once.
Yeah, form. You'd have to go to the settings of the form. So if you click
Is
on
it
the
actually
settings,
I thought it was on the field settings. No.
oh
No, I already have that. Look, no duplicates. I already have this checked off. So now that makes me wonder, but I don't want to investigate because I don't want to show that person's email. Like, did she use two different email? Maybe she realized that she used the wrong email for the Zoom, and so she resubmitted with a different email. But this setting is super helpful to help a little bit with the no duplicates. So.
Yeah, there's also the settings which you can set one form submission per user, and it's just a cookie, I believe. So if they ever cleared their cookies, they could set it again. Session,
well, that's
session
kind of fun. That's over in normal form settings.
Yeah, so if you scroll down, should be.
Does that require people to be logged in though? No, it's just cookies.
No. We scroll up. Enable entry limit right there, right where your mouse is. So that should be.
But that would be like a total number of entries.
Yeah, but if you open up that as we debug gravity forms, if you hit that right there.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was.
No,
I thought
that's
we
just
could
saying
set
how
one
many
per
total
user.
you want to accept, which is a super handy feature. Like if you're selling something, you only have a limited number, like tickets.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well,
cool.
Let me show you some of the code.
Show us the code.
Yeah. So we will make this plugin public. I think it might be private right now on our GitHub. But I made this myself with some AI help. But basically it has some includes. I think Steve had submitted some suggestions to make this more reusable for folks. What I'll note about this is that it is very much hard-coded to expect our specific form. But I think you could look at this and pull out some thoughts about how you could do it yourself. So, for example, I have the people count shortcode, and that's what says how many people have the approved status. And what we're doing here is we're just adding the shortcode. And then in the actual shortcode, there's one attribute, which is what ID. And the reason why I do have an attribute on this is the second year, right? I have two different gravity forms, one for each year. So I had to tell it what to look at. And then basically it's saying if there's no form ID, we're going to return and go back. Let me zoom this in a tiny bit and sort of fail. And then what it does is it queries the fields. So Gravity Forms has this field _ filters. And the key is the number. And that is actually when you're creating this. Let me see if I can go back into the form itself. So when you're writing things like this, you want to get the ID number from your field. So this right here, how many hours are you pledging? This is ID 8. So that's kind of what we're doing. But in this case, I'm looking at field ID 31, which is the status, and I'm only looking at them when the value is approved. And then basically what it does is it gets them all, and then it just counts, and it returns a count. And in this case, I wanted it to return that plain count without any formatting because I knew I was going to be inserting it into a sentence. If you're going to have it on its own line or something, then you might have to have extra HTML tags like paragraphs or headings or whatever. But that's
while we were recording, somebody pledged 3 or more hours. Did you notice that?
Just right there. Yeah.
Well, it was at 98. It was at 98 hours before. Now it's at 101.
Oh yeah, that was because I approved Jen. That made her 3 hours come in.
Okay, cool.
So it shouldn't change without me approving somebody.
Okay.
And the hour total is pretty similar. It looks like the same thing. Where our shortcode, it's just going and it will get whatever ID for the form it needs to look at. It make sure they're approved. And then we have basically where we're getting all the entries we're looking for. So this is that ID 8 that we were just looking at. And we're getting the count to get the total hours. And then it's just adding for each form, it adds up the hours so that it can output a total.
Yeah, that is awesome. So
And then
you're going to make all of this available. Are people going to need a specific theme to run this? Like, is this only going to be formatted for your given theme? How is that going to break down?
So this specific plugin, it's a plugin, so you could put it on anywhere. There is a little bit, if I lost it here. So there are some, actually, no, I don't even think I have styles in this. So you might have to, nope, there are some styles on the people grid that would match our theme styles, but you could theoretically, if you're like, I don't, like ours gives them a yellow border and rounded border radius and all that stuff. If you wanted to use something like this, you could then, overwrite the styles in your theme. I think what is most useful here, though, is probably getting, like, just looking at this code as just an example of how you can pull out of Gravity Forms, because obviously, like, that specific form is it's very specific to us, like what we're asking people and all of that kind of stuff. But I think what's most useful is if you're trying to figure out how can I get data from Gravity Forms, looking at the form ID, shortcodes, and some of the things like field filters that we're using. And there's a lot of documentation on this in Gravity Forms documentation. But you can sort of see like how we're getting data and pulling it out. And basically, so for example, to get someone's job title, we're just looking for a specific field, and you just use the entry and an open square bracket and then the ID number and then a closed square bracket. And then that like gets data from a field. I will say this will probably be pulled in before we make this public, but I hard-coded all of the field IDs because I was building it for me and for a specific thing. But I did notice over the weekend that my partner Steve was like, well, if we're going to show this to people, maybe we should not have all the hard-coded field IDs. So we're going to try and make it a little bit more reusable for folks. And we can also include the JSON file for the import of this form into Gravity Forms if somebody does just want to import this form and then, tweak it a little bit for whatever their use case is. But I would say, honestly, me being a non-developer, just like a power user of WordPress is kind of how I consider myself.
Me too.
Creating those shortcodes and being able to display the content from the form entries was pretty easy. And I would say the biggest thing you want to take into account is, like I said, probably having some sort of administrative or hidden field where you can actually set them to be approved, because I don't think you just want to default display every entry the moment you get it on the front end of your website.
Yeah. I think
security.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of folks, just speaking for myself, I think if you're the power user, like, if your ICP was to go after power users, not that this is like a commercial product for you, this particular plugin, but if it were, a lot of us are using some kind of coding agent these days. And I think the fact that you've built the framework for it, somebody's just going to copy and paste potentially your GitHub repo and be like, build it based on this, or like use my form based on like what their form IDs that they've placed in this code, but just replace it with mine. And people are just going to talk to their code to have it like get modified, right? So I think we're the whole open source world. This is a whole other podcast, but like the whole open source world and how we're helping each other by sharing open source code is changing dramatically. But also, like, it makes our lives a whole heck of a lot easier. Like, if everybody knows that you made this already, then they start with you. And maybe the new currency is stars on your GitHub repo, right? Where it's just like, this is the one that you should use to start with. Even if I'm forking it, like, this is I'm paying tribute, to, Amber's, main product, and then we're taking it from here. So it's an interesting world. But yeah, this is awesome. This is great.
Yeah.
And it's great to see it making everything so much easier for you and fun at the same time. Like, you're getting to code some stuff, but also it's like usable stuff, like that headline to join 27 people 101.5 hours for those of you that aren't seeing the screen and just listening to the podcast. We're looking at the website, and those kinds of edits took time before, right? Or like a whole hell of a lot more like logic that you're like, it's not even worth doing. And now
well, even just,
you can do it faster.
Like while we were sitting here, we were, I've got like 8 more people. If I had to go every time I wanted to approve someone, add up all this math and then go change this number manually in my heading block.
Yeah.
That would be super annoying, right?
Yeah.
Now I can just QA them quickly to make sure there's nothing wrong. Hit publish. I mean, we could do that right now.
Yeah.
Right? And it'll just refresh the page and it'll do all the math from whatever people entered in their Gravity Forms entries, which I really appreciate. So
awesome stuff, Amber Hinds. I will link up the landing page so that folks who want to partake on May 21st, 2026 can do that. You can go right to the form that we just looked at, click on Make a Pledge, and pledge your many hours, to the cause, and watch the numbers tick up as Amber approves your registration. Amber, anywhere else you want folks to go to say thanks?
The main thing is equalizedigital.com/GAD, GAAD 2026. And if you want to find me on social, I am most active on X at Hey Amber Hinds.
Awesome stuff. Everybody else, thanks for listening to another episode of Breakdown. You can find us at gravityforms.com/breakdown. Search for Breakdown wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.